Well, good morning. Welcome back to the broadcast, Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Tuesday, October 5th, 2021. And our top story today, a requirement for UK pension plans to carry out a climate scenario analysis. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more is Bob Colley. He's principal and founder of Colley ESG. Bob, great to see you again. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
I'm happy to be here, Jeff.
So once again, we're talking about ESG, sustainable impact investing, however you want to describe it. New regulations out of the UK effective October 1st. What can you tell us? What are they and what do they mean?
So the specific regulations that are kicking in or that kicked in on October 1st apply to UK pension funds, but it's part of a much bigger adoption within the UK of something called TCFD. And this is worth saying a couple of words about. So the TCFD being the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. And I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about that. It's kind of been adopted in the UK, but it's going to be a bigger deal worldwide. It's quite a significant initiative, and it's headed up by some serious individuals. Michael Bloomberg's involved and a few others in terms of getting this up and running. And what TCFD is it's a framework for reporting on climate-related stuff. So companies would follow the regular or the guidelines in terms of how they report the impact of climate-related impacts on the company. Investors can do it as well. This is what we're specifically talking about here with the UK pension funds. They're having to do their reporting on it. And so it's quite a broad framework, which is almost emerging as being something worldwide, as being a standard for how you can report on stuff to do with climate. So it's very specifically related to climate, not to other ESG factors. But it's something which does seem to be, there's a lot of rallying around it as being this is a good framework for disclosing how climate-related stuff is relevant to us as an organization, whether you're a company, an investor, whatever.
Bob, who is covered under this reg? Is it every pension fund? Is it just traditional pensions, defined benefit pensions, or is this also defined contribution as well?
So as it's being rolled out in the UK, they're doing it in stages. So initially, it's only if you're more than £5 billion. So what's that, $7 or $8 billion? So, I mean, that's about 50 funds in the 50 plans in the UK would reach that scale. So they're the ones that have to start doing this now. And a year from now, it broadens out and it catches more organizations and so on. So they're kind of introducing it over time, depending on size. DB and DC, obviously, it kind of applies a little bit differently to those. If you're a DB plan, you have to think about not just your investment, you've got to think about how's this going to impact the liabilities. These organizations the DB plans have to think about could climate affect the plan sponsor, their ability to meet the payments that we're expecting? How does that work through? So it's quite a complex thing for a DB plan to look at. DC, you maybe don't have those considerations, but you've got to think about how each individual is going to be affected, about the whole structure. So it covers quite a lot of ground. But as I say, on day one, it's just the big guys need to worry about it to start with.
And Bob, if I'm a trustee of one of these top 50 plans, or an administrator, someone who, like an executive director, someone responsible for overseeing the apparatus, what are some of the things that I need to be thinking about practically?
So there's a few elements to it. The way that TCFD is structured is there's really four key elements. So one of which is what they call governance, i.e. that's the process. How do you approach managing climate risk? What's the structure that you're using there? Second element is strategy, which speaks for itself. What are the things that you're doing? Third one, which I think is particularly interesting, and we'll come back to, is risk management. How are you dealing with these risks? And the fourth element is the metrics that you're going to use. What specific numbers are you measuring? And even targets. Do you have a target for what you want your carbon footprint to be? And so on. The risk measurement is the one which is very interesting from a pension funds point of view, because it's introduced for the first time, really, a significant requirement to start doing scenario analysis. And this is really is a different type of analysis for pension fund investors to do here. And actually, pension fund investors in the US as well. I worked for a long time with some very large US pension funds, and all sorts of analysis gets done. And in theory, you would have thought these guys would do scenario analysis all the time. In practice, it's something which big investment organizations just haven't really made great use of in the past. But that's a specific requirement within this particular framework within TCFD, that you start doing scenario analysis. So it's quite interesting from the point of view of someone like myself to see organizations start to come to terms with how do you make use of scenario analysis in investment context. It's a technique which some types of organization have used quite successfully in the past. Institutional investors, it's just not been part of the toolkit that they've really used up to now.
Bob, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the practical impact of these new regulations. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM.
You need a financial plan that fits the way you want to live in retirement. A plan that can help grow and protect your money, now or in the future. With an annuity in your plan to help cover essential expenses, you'll have the freedom to live the retirement you want. This is what an annuity can do. Find the right financial professional to show you how. Learn more at protectedincome.org.
Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report, both absolutely free, for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-504-8194.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning to Bob Colley. He's principal and founder of Colley ESG. Bob, thanks as always for staying with us this morning.
It's my pleasure.
All right, Bob, new regs, life's a learned experience, Bob, and I don't think, is anyone expecting this to be perfect on day one? I would assume that trustees in the UK are going to be learning a lot of lessons, and this is going to get better. This regulation will get stronger, better, more practical over time.
It really is the case, and I mean the thing with risk management is it's not an exact science, because the risks, the biggest risks that we face, and especially around something like climate, the risks really are that we don't we don't know what might happen. We don't know how things are going to evolve and what might catch us out. We've seen even over the last couple of years with the pandemic, it just things come out of nowhere and catch us by surprise. And so with risk management, the day that you think you've got it cracked and the day that you think, yeah, we're on top of this, that's a bad day, because that's not how risk works. Stuff comes out of left field and catches you by surprise. And unfortunately on climate, that's an area where there's a lot of scientific knowledge out there, but there's nothing like as much scientific knowledge as we'd really like in order to plot a good route going forward on that.
Yeah, like I said, I think we're going to be learning a lot. Just practically speaking, Bob, are things like, will this change impact the investment policy statement, which is kind of like the cornerstone, if you will, of investment thesis and monitoring? I mean, is this something where you have this new regulatory apparatus in place, you've got to do these scenario analysis? How does that get written into, or does it not get written into our friend, the IPS?
Exactly. So the way it's going to work in the UK, I think some organisations will choose to put those statements together and say it's all investment risk, it's all investment policy. We're going to have one statement covering everything. Other ones may say, well, we've got the traditional investment policy statement over here, and we're going to supplement that with here's specifically is how we're dealing with climate. I think over time it all becomes a single policy and a single statement, because it's not like these are two separate things that we're doing. We're managing investment risk over here and climate risk over here. It's all risk. It's all things that might affect your ability to run as a pension fund or a mutual fund or whichever type of organization we're talking about. And so ultimately, it all becomes one process for managing everything, including climate. But that initial stage of really recognizing how big the risks and the implications of climate modeling are for investors, it is kind of in that initial phase of starting to take it a lot more seriously than we ever did historically, and working that into the process at the moment.
Bob, let's talk about the European Union. Well, they follow, obviously, not obviously, but we've had Brexit, so now the UK is its own entity again. Yeah. What about the European Union? Will it follow suit? Has it followed suit? And Europe has always been ahead of the US and a lot of the other global players in terms of climate change. So what about the EU? What are they up to?
Yeah, so the EU, in fact, has a bigger plan with more components around this. So TCFD specifically is not as, that's more of something that the UK has adopted up to now. And I think the EU will start to roll that out a lot more aggressively over time. But the EU has a lot of other regulations around disclosures. Greenwashing is where the EU has really done a lot of work to try and make sure that you can't label products as being green or sustainable if you can't actually deliver on that promise. So the EU's been very focused on that, but they're deliberately trying to take the lead. The European Union wants to be seen as the world leaders on green investment. And so it's interesting for the US, obviously, which we're all very interested in where that goes. It's kind of behind, but the good news about being behind is you can look at what's worked and what hasn't worked in the EU, in the UK, see what regulations it may make sense to introduce. And it also means that when there are regulations in the US, the global investment community is a global community. And so if they've become accustomed to some of these regulations because they have to follow them in Europe, it makes it easier to roll them out in the US. So definitely everything's connected here. And the US regulatory situation, obviously, the Biden administration's made this a big priority. So, I think their window for acting may be relatively short, so we're likely to see something in the next few months, I would imagine.
Yeah, Bob, I like how you made being behind actually seem positive. Bob, what about other continents? I want to ask you about, we often talk about the EU, the UK, the US, but there's money to be allocated in continents like Africa, South America. Asia, the Asia area of the world.
Yeah.
You can tell I'm not too cultured. But what about those? What about those areas? What are they doing in terms of some of these rules and regulations? Are they on par, or are they lagging like the U.S. is lagging?
Well, it's a very mixed bag depending on where you go. And the other thing that is noticeable as you go around the world, it is these issues are kind of a big deal everywhere, but the exact emphasis, what people may be emphasizing will be different between different countries. So for example, it is quite noticeable that with US investors, climate's a big deal everywhere, but within the US, there's also a lot of interest in social equity. So diversity and inclusion is something that people are really looking at trying to be strong on. So that's a big element of the US focus, and perhaps less so in Asia, where the environmental side is maybe given more emphasis relative to where we may be in Europe or the US. And so you see a kind of different emphasis, but I think it's fair to say that globally people are recognizing that business is, you can't just look at a business and look at the numbers and say that's the only thing that matters. We expect companies to be good citizens, whether that's environmentally, whether that's on social issues, whether it's in terms of equality and so on. And so I think people are kind of expecting a little bit more from a company, from an investment today, than just being a pure money-making machine and never mind the consequences.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a lot less quantitative, a lot more qualitative. And I got to tell you, just being in this industry for a long time, maybe not as long as you, we have a hard time with qualitative. We really do. It's that touchy-feely thing. It's not as, when something's quantitative, Bob, you can measure it against an index. You can measure it against its peers. When something's a little more qualitative, a little bit more difficult to do that.
It is. And the counter argument to that is that's where the opportunities really are. I mean, if you've really worked out the math behind something, there's probably other people have done the same thing, and there's probably not that much opportunity to do a really good job there. And sometimes it's where you've got that genuine uncertainty, the big unknown, that the biggest opportunities lie.
Yeah. Well, Bob Colley, always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for this great dialogue. And every time I walk out of these conversations with our guests, I feel like I'm that much smarter. Great seeing you. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective.
Thanks for the opportunity.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Waiting here for you to take and drink of. But if you're tired of the same old stuff.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.